Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel Career Stop. My name is Sunan Sharma, and I am the host of this channel. If you are someone who loves learning new things and is staying up to date with the latest trends and development as a Scrum Master, then you are at the right place. Friends, during the weekends, I try to pick one or two questions from our channel viewers and from our WhatsApp group. So if you also have some interesting question, do let me know. So let's begin. And friends, before we start, please subscribe and like this video. Okay, let's see today's question. So this question is given by one of our viewer in LinkedIn. The question is how to manage user stories that cannot be split. Now, this is very interesting question. Let's see how we can approach this question. Okay. So first of all, we have to define what is user story a little bit, and then we'll see the different approaches. Okay, so here it goes. So in Agile software development, user stories are short, simple description of a feature told from a perspective of the person who desire the new capability, usually a user or a customer of the system. Now, the goal of splitting user stories is to create smaller, more manageable chunks of work that can be completed in a single iteration or sprint, as this can help to make them easier to understand, estimate, and implement. But there may be times when it is not possible or practical to split a user story into a smaller pieces. Now, in these cases, there are few approaches that we can take to manage this situation. So let me just share few points. Okay. So the very first one is focus on the smallest valuable unit of work. So if a user story is too large to be split, try to identify the smallest unit of value that can be delivered to the end user. Now, this could be a single feature or a function, or it could be a more comprehensive piece of functionality that provide value to the user. Now, the second important thing is user acceptance criteria to break down the story. Now, you have to use the acceptance criteria to define the specific conditions that must be met in order for the user story to be considered complete. Now, this can help to break down the story into a smaller, more manageable pieces that can be worked on independently. Now, the third thing is user story maps to visualize the work. Now, story maps can be helpful tool to visualize the user journey and break down user story into a smaller pieces. So friends, I have taken the story maps in detail in the next slide because I think a lot has been written on user stories, but not much content which we have created on story maps. So I have taken this specific point and will try to elaborate in detail in upcoming slide. So let's move on to the next point, that is break the story down into a smaller task. Now, even if the user story itself cannot be split, you may be able to break it down into a smaller task that can be completed in a single iteration or a sprint. Now, this can help you to make a progress on the story without having to complete it all at once. The next thing which we can do is work on the story in parallel. So if the user story is too large to be completed in a single iteration, you may be able to work on it in a parallel with other stories. Now, this can help you to make progress on the story while also delivering value to the customer. So these are the few points which I have jotted down. I have few more points. Let me share. Okay. The other points is you have to define the story in a more detail. Now, sometimes what happens, the user story may be too broad or vague to be easily split into a smaller pieces. In this case, it may be helpful to define the story in a more detailed, precise way by adding the acceptance criteria or different examples. Now, this can help to clarify the scope of the story and to make it easier to split into smaller pieces. The next point is input from the team. So if you are having difficulty in splitting a user story as a team member, it may be helpful to take or to seek input from the rest of the team. Now, they may have some ideas for how to break the story down into a simple or a smaller pieces, or maybe they have able to identify dependencies or challenges that you have not considered. So it's good to always to take the input from the team if you're not able to split the user story. The next point is you have to consider splitting the story horizontally. Now, everyone is aware about vertical splitting, but instead of trying to break the story down into a smaller pieces vertically, you could try to split it horizontally by breaking it down into a multiple stories that cover different part of the functionality. Now, this can be useful approach if the story covers a lot of different functionality that is not easily divided into a smaller pieces. This is the one of the approach which you can do. The next thing is try some technical approaches. So for example, you have to use refactoring to make the user story more manageable. Now the point over here is the key is to find the right balance between the smaller manageable user stories and the larger one. Now the more complex stories that deliver value to the end user. So it may take some experimentation and adjustment to find the right approach for your team and project, but with time and practice, you should be able to effectively manage user stories of any size. It's important to remember that the goal of agile development is to deliver value to the customer as quickly as possible. So if you are unable to split a user story, it may be necessary to reassess your priorities and see if there are other stories that can be worked on in the meantime. So these are the things which you can do with complex user stories. Now, I also want to share with you user story maps to visualize the work. Now, this is a kind of follow-up or add-on which I just want to put in this particular answer because we have used that also as one of the input. So how to use user story maps to visualize the work. Now, story maps are tools which are used to visualize and organize the user stories. So they are sometimes also known as user requirements or user needs, you know. So if we are doing the product development process, we need this story map tool. Now they can help team to understand and prioritize the work that needs to be done and to identify dependencies and potential challenges. I'll give you an example of a hypothetical project. So let's say I'm working, or I want to create a new mobile app. So first, what I am going to do, I will identify the main goal or theme of the project. So for example, let's say the goal is to build a new mobile app for booking fitness classes. Now, next, I have to create a high-level map that shows the main feature or areas of the app. These might include things like calendar view, a class, search function, a payment system, and a user profile page. There might be a number of functionality which we can use over here. So for each of these main feature, you have to create a set of user stories that describe the specific need or requirement of the user. For example, a user story for the calendar might be, as a user, I want to see a list of available classes for the week so that I can easily find and book the one I want to attend. This may be a sample user story. Now, next thing is we have to arrange the user stories on the story map in a way that makes sense for the project. So you might group them by feature, by priority, or by some other criteria. It's up to you. Now the next thing is, oops, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the next thing is we have to use a story map to track the progress of the project, and we have to identify any potential roadblock or the dependency. So for example, if one of the user story depends on another being completed first, you can visualize this on the map and make sure the team is aware of this particular dependency. There are many tools available, Miro, and there are similar kind of tools which are now there. So they have inbuilt template for this story map, so you can use them. So I hope this helped give you an idea of how to use story map to visualize the work on a project. Let me know if you have any questions or need more examples or explanations. I will happy to do that. Yeah, so with this thought, thank you guys. I hope you like this quick session. Let me know if you have any other questions or comments I love to see different questions on the weekend, and I'll try to pick them as and when I have some time. So yeah, with this thought, thank you guys. Bye. Happy weekend.